Someday is one of the most dangerous words we say to ourselves. One of the themes that we often explore here on the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast is that menopause isn't just a season of physical change. It's also an opportunity to reflect on the life we're creating. It invites us to ask ourselves some important questions. Am I living intentionally? Am I honoring what truly matters to me? Or have I been putting my own dreams on hold while taking care of everyone else? Today, we're exploring what it means to stop waiting for someday, move beyond fear, and give ourselves permission to create a life that reflects who we are and who we're becoming. Hello, and welcome to the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast, where we are inspiring women in menopause to unleash their inner queen, write their own story, and define their own menopause journey. I am your host, the Menopause Queen, Lisa R. Triggs, certified menopause coach, certified neuroscience coach, motivational speaker, and best-selling author of The Menopause Mindshift, How I Unleashed My Inner Queen, and You Can Too. This is a space for real, honest conversations about menopause, because menopause isn't just about hormones. It's neurological, it's emotional, and it's deeply personal. After 20 years of navigating menopause, I've learned that what most women are missing isn't more information, it's a different way of seeing themselves. And in this podcast, we talk about what's really happening in your body, your brain, and the tools that support you in feeling better. You'll hear from inspiring guests, as well as the insights and perspective shifts that changed everything for me. Because self-love in menopause isn't a luxury. It's the foundation. So if you are ready to think differently about menopause, reconnect with yourself, and define your own journey, you are in the right place. Hello and welcome to the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast, where we are inspiring women to write their own story, define their own journey, and unleash their inner queen. I am your host, the Menopause Queen, Lisa R. Triggs. I'm a certified menopause coach, certified neuroscience coach, motivational speaker, and best-selling author. Today, we're going to be talking about fear and how the brain perceives it. This is an episode you're going to want to listen to. Let's dive in. I am honored to welcome our guest today, Pat Schultz, author of Does Your Bucket List Have a Hole in It? After discovering a college paper by her mother at age 62, describing her dream of living by the sea, a dream that was never fulfilled, Pat's perspective on life changed forever. Today, she inspires others to stop postponing their dreams, move beyond fear, and take the courageous first steps towards creating a life that reflects their values, purpose, and the legacy that they want to leave behind. Pat, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Welcome, welcome.
I'm happy to be here.
I really resonate with what you do, your message. Can you begin by telling us about who you are? Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a
That's
Midwestern
awesome.
girl.
A Midwestern girl. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us about how you got started into what you do now and how the book came about.
I'm happy to share that. I had participated in a year-long coaching program, and it was so impactful in my life. And I thought to myself, I would like to have that kind of impact on other people's lives. And so I pursued certification to facilitate a particular coaching program. And over the years, I started to specialize with women over 40. And I think that was just because my life could resonate with theirs and theirs could resonate with mine. And the focus really got very clear after my mother had passed away and we discovered that term paper. And it was actually my son who discovered it, and he wanted to read from it at my mother's memorial service. And so he was really impacted by what she had written. And part of the assignment was to describe her ideal day 5 years into her future. And there was this beautiful description of this house that she lived in by the sea, the gentleman she was living with, what they did on a daily basis. And I was shocked when I read it because I had never known about my mother's dreams. She never told anybody. And I was so sad because obviously she never did it. And what really made the hair on my arms stand up was she had been 62 when she wrote that paper, and I was 65 reading it. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, am I going to end up the same way as my mother? Are my dreams
Mm.
going to be just dreams? Are they never going to become a reality? And I jumped into action. I was trying to make up for lost time. I had a flurry of activity. Some of it wasn't so productive, but it really made me focus on the way people postpone their dreams, and women especially, because we're so busy taking care of everyone else.
Mhm,
And we identify with that role, and our own dreams and aspirations often get put on the back burner. And we keep
mhm.
waiting around for someday when the kids are grown,
Yeah.
someday when the cat dies, someday when I'm ready, someday when I'm have enough education, whatever it is. And that someday never happens. And it never happened for my mother. And it did have a profound effect on me.
Mm. So is that what inspired you to write your book?
Absolutely. It's all about my mother and the discovery of that term paper. And when I say, does your bucket list have a hole in it? The way we get the hole in our bucket list is by putting off our dreams, that waiting for someday, and the stories that we tell ourselves. The stories, I'm too old. I missed my opportunity.
Yeah.
And I went through the same thing. I wanted to be a transformational speaker. And I received an email in my inbox one day from a coach out on the West Coast. Now I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. This woman was in California. I didn't know anything about her. I don't know how it ended up in my inbox, but it did. And I wanted to go. However, all those stories, oh, it's too much money. I can't spend that much money on me. I'm so old. Nobody's going to care what I have to say. I'm too old, too fat to get on the stage. I mean, everything. And I almost didn't go. But I did go. And I did get up on the stage, and I discovered that there were a lot of people who were just as old as I was there, as many who could have lost a few pounds before they got on stage. And all those fears I had, all those stories that I'd been telling myself, they didn't mean anything once I got there, but
Mhm.
they almost kept me from going.
It's amazing what our minds will do, either positive or negative, in either direction. And I love that you're talking about fear because I was just talking about it in last week's episode about letting go of grief or like the body we used to have. Not everyone experiences this. Some women go through this stage of life and may not gain a pound. Others of us gain tens of pounds, but there's a fear attached to it. And the way our brain is working when that fear comes about, a lot of people don't acknowledge, don't make the connection about the fear and how to resolve that fear. Walk us through how we might resolve that fear at all.
What the book will help people understand is that fear, fear to us, really, for most of us, is just discomfort. Our brain does not like change. It likes things the way they are. And the brain doesn't care if we're happy. The brain doesn't care if we fulfill our dreams. The only thing the brain cares about are we safe? And so every time we think of a Caribbean lifestyle or going out to California to be a transformational speaker, the brain is going, whoa, what the heck do you think you're doing?
Hmm.
That's dangerous. That's risky. And it may be risky, but it's not dangerous. It's uncomfortable because we've never done it before. But our amygdala and our brain interprets it as a threat, a physical threat.
Right.
And, you know, we don't have saber-toothed tigers nowadays, but our brain reacts as if there's a saber-toothed tiger around the corner. And really, it could be the discomfort, maybe some embarrassment, a fear of rejection, of not
Hmm.
being liked. And a lot of that goes back to experiences that we had, perhaps when we were younger, when we were children, and we had a bad experience and our brain has latched onto it. And so a story that we tell ourselves is that it's dangerous to be rejected. You don't want to be rejected. That's a bad thing.
Right.
Or if people
You
don't
don't want to
like you,
put
that's a
yourself
bad
out
thing.
there. Yeah. You don't
Mhm.
want to take that chance. Yeah.
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 And so it does explain that it's something discomfort or uncomfortable. And if my mother had just taken one little step, if she had just purchased a plane ticket, if she had just looked at houses on a Caribbean island, if she had just researched places she could live, that would have been one more step, one little step toward reaching her goal. And I think that there is an identity transition that happens at menopause. I mean, I think that we look in the mirror and we see our bodies changing and we think, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? And we have all the emotions and we think, my gosh, what's happening to me? And we set off that amygdala, we set off the alarms. I don't know what's happening. And when I don't know what's happening, when my brain doesn't know what's happening, then that's a danger. And we respond as if we're in danger. And really, there's an identity, our body is transitioning, but I think that our identity is transitioning as well. And we think about the roles that we've had our entire lives. And suddenly we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're thinking, my role could be changing because that happens at a time when kids are off to college or kids are grown. We might be in a career that we're no longer interested in. We might be going through a divorce. All these things might be happening and our roles are shifting and we're thinking, what's going on with me? But the good news is we're at a point where we can choose. We can reevaluate. We can reevaluate where we were, where we are, and we can choose how we want to go forward.
I totally agree. While you were speaking, I was reminded of a show that I watched when I was a kid. I think it was Lost in Space. I don't know
I'm
if
not
you
familiar.
remember that show at all. And there was a robot, and when danger was coming, the robot would freak out and the arms were going, warning, warning, warning. That's the image I got when you were describing the brain and what the brain is doing. And it's warning us, it's trying to keep us safe. So, from my perspective, it is there are things we can do to help retrain it, tell it it's okay and ensure it's safe. But since you brought up menopause, I noticed that you had said you went through it blindly yourself. So can you tell me what does that mean? What did that look like? When you say blindly, can you
Well,
elaborate on
listen
that for me?
listening to you and other women and it's like, my gosh, I don't remember menopause. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't I remember it? And I'm going to paint a picture here. I had one child and he was born on my 39th birthday. So in my early 40s, I'm going through having just had a kid, all right, probably perimenopause, all right,
Mhm.
a divorce, a high pressure job, and I was in such a state of high alert. I don't know this, but in looking back, I think that I just took everything that was happening to me with sort of like a grain of salt, like, well, this is just the way things are. And I think I was oblivious to really a lot of the changes that were going on in my body. I mean, I was so stressed, I didn't realize how stressed I was. I thought headaches were normal. I thought feeling stressed was normal. And until you stop that, you don't realize how stressed you were until you start addressing it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that wasn't normal at all. That was about as out of normal as it could possibly be. And I remember some symptoms, like I had night sweats, all right, but I don't recall many of the symptoms that other women talk about. And I think it's because I was just so wrapped up in everything that was going on. I just assumed that it was normal.
Yeah. You probably didn't attribute it to being menopause.
No,
Like,
no.
that's what happened to me. The brain fog and the memory loss and all that. I didn't find out till a couple of years later, like after I had already started taking my omega-3s and working out more and then saw those things on a list that was attributed to menopause symptoms. And I was like, what the because for me, when those things started happening, I was very concerned. So I went to the doctor because I have a family history. My dad actually died of brain cancer and my mom had 2 benign tumors removed. So when those things started happening to me, I went straight to the doctor and I said, okay, we have to do some tests. At no time did she ever say to me that, oh, by the way, this could be attributed to menopause. So
People
talk
don't
about
talk about it.
flying blindly, like you say, you don't realize there were so many things I didn't know. Yeah, the stress, and some of the other things I had no idea until later when I was doing some more research. I came across a list of symptoms and checked out and started reading down and I went, oh my God. Like even I had recurring vertigo and the first time I had it, it lasted for like 18 months. So finding out later that that could be attributed to menopause explains so much because I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't go away.
It's so
It was
interesting that you say that because
the oddest
I
thing.
had vertigo as well, but I never made a connection to menopause.
No. Yeah.
And the doctor certainly didn't. They just treated me for the vertigo. Now mine didn't last like yours did, but it did come back. There was
Mine
that
too.
period in my life
Yeah.
where I had vertigo and then I would get treated for it, but then it would happen again and I would get treated for it. Was it
Same here. It
attributable?
came back about like it came back about 4 years in a row and always at the same time of year. It was the
Oh my
strangest
goodness.
thing. In addition to the vertigo, I also experienced just the dizziness too. I find it interesting too how some women will say, oh, I'm so glad I'm past that now. And I kind of bite my tongue a little bit, because I want to say, are you really? Like, do you still get the occasional hot flash? Like even my neighbor had called me up last year because she was in her late 60s. So she thought I'm through that. But then she started getting hot flashes and stuff again. So I said, well, are you stressed? How much wine are you drinking? It's not necessarily done and gone. There are things that still happen or can still linger and come back every now and again. Even for me, the hot flash is the one thing. They're not severe, but I'll get a little warm when I have a bowl of ice cream or something like that sugar or stress. Stress has always been a big trigger for me. So, so thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's very helpful to the podcast and the audience and for people to know that even today, sometimes we don't attribute to what we're going through to actually being related to menopause. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and really, if I had made the connection, more than likely I would have just assumed it's something that you have to bear, endure, and
Yeah.
deal with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people really didn't talk about it.
Yeah. And it's funny because even for myself, I ended up going to my doctor and saying, I want to try hormone therapy. And she was hesitant. I mean, this is going back 10 years ago now too, right? When there was still so much controversy around it. I was desperate. I said, I can't sleep. I can't function. I've been crying every day for like 2 months. I'm stressed to the max.
Well, and that is a question that I asked myself. If I had made a connection and I did go to the doctor, would they have agreed with that connection to menopause?
Let's get back to what you do and who you serve for a few minutes. The coaching that you do today.
Using some neuroscience, helping women transform their fears into action steps. And that really is what the book is about. Does your bucket list have a hole in it? And it's either the fear of taking an action or fear because of a belief we have. And that was, I believe, really what happened to my mom. And I think that it happens to a lot of people. And when we understand what fear really is, modern day fear, and I'm not talking about a real physical danger, there are real physical dangers, but most of the fears we have in modern society really aren't fears. They're a discomfort or perceived fear. And one of the things that I ask my clients frequently is when they say they have a fear of being rejected. And I say, well, why do you have a fear of being rejected? What's so bad about rejection? What's so bad about being rejected that it keeps us from doing so many things? And well, then that means somebody doesn't like me. And so what's so bad if somebody doesn't like you? And once you keep asking, well, why is that so bad? People realize there really isn't anything so terribly bad
Yeah.
about an individual not liking you or being rejected by someone. At one time, being rejected by society or a small group was dangerous because we were so dependent on that community, but not today. And, not everybody is going to like you. So what's so bad about calling somebody on the phone and they say no and you're rejected? But we're
Just
afraid to
move
pick
on
up
to the
the
next
phone.
one. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
afraid to pick up the phone and call someone. We're afraid to step out of our comfort zone because we may look foolish and we'll be embarrassed. And we can survive those things. And, we talk a lot about confidence and self-trust. Confidence is not necessarily something that you have or you don't have. It's really an outcome. And it's an outcome. It's a result from taking action. And so if I can get my clients to transform their fear of rejection or their fear of embarrassment or their fear of the unknown, whatever it is, and take some kind of action, one small courageous act, that's how you build your confidence. And neuroscientifically, when you do something in spite of uncertainty, or that fear, that discomfort, when you do it in spite of that, now you've given your brain new data. And remember, our
Mhm.
brain loves data. All right. And
Yep.
it's going to take that data and say, wait a minute, you just did something that was risky and you survived and you're still alive. So maybe you can do these risky things. And so the more we act courageously, the more we take one step and another step, the more new data we're giving our brain. And now we're creating new neural pathways that say, I can handle uncertainty. I can handle rejection. I can handle people not liking me. And we create new stories based on those new neural pathways.
Yep.
And so that's
Exactly. That's we're
what we
we're
do.
retraining it. We're retraining it.
Brain.
Yeah.
And through neuroplasticity, we can do that. You know that old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? That's not true. You
Yep.
can teach an old dog new tricks through
That's right.
neuroplasticity.
You put the right treat in front of them, that dog's going to roll over. Absolutely. You
We
just have
can
to
learn
provide
new
the right stimuli.
tips, new roles, we can learn new things, new habits, and we can do that throughout our entire life. So
Absolutely.
what we did, that identity that we gave ourselves when we were 25 or 35, we don't have to stay with that the rest of our lives.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I'm so glad that you said that because I hope who's ever listening really listen to that. And if rewind it and hear what she just said again, to hear it again and repeat it, put that on repeat. We are able to retrain our brain. It's completely possible. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're at. And because who wants to be miserable? People, we want to be happy. We deserve to be happy. Sometimes it takes that conscious choice, like you're talking about, that step into the fear. There's even a book about it, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Have you ever heard
Hmm.
of that book?
Yes,
My
I
husband
have.
has that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And
And
then
that
you
fear
get
is
that sense of you're like, oh my God, I survived. I
I
survived.
survived.
So I just want to mention when we're talking about fear of the brain, let's take advantage of the brain because there are other things that we can do to utilize the brain to work in our advantage, particularly the subconscious. I've talked about that a little bit as well, like playing specific music before you go to bed or reading something positive. The subconscious mind is actually more powerful than the conscious mind. So if you have that fear blockage while you're awake, you can use your subconscious mind while you're sleeping. Play something in the background, even if you design it yourself and play certain affirmations. There are ways to retrain your brain because even when we talk about that, retraining our brain, and even sometimes that can seem scary to some people. Like, oh no, I can't do that. Yes, you can. And there are ways to do it. And using your subconscious mind is one in particular way to be able to achieve that goal without it being so scary.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
is there anything else that you'd like to add or anything that you would love the audience to know about you, your book, or what you do?
I think that I'd like to leave the audience with the message that it's not that you suddenly become fearless, okay, fearless, totally without fear. It's that you stop letting fear make all your decisions. And to me, that's the beginning of self-love. So that you're not letting fear rule your life and make every single decision. To tell someone you should be fearless might be a little bit too much, but you only need to take one courageous step in spite of the fear, just one step, because that one step plants a seed for a new neural pathway in the brain. And then the next step and the next step and the next step. And suddenly you've created, it's sort of like I always use the analogy when we were kids, we would cut through the backyards. Sometimes we would walk, sometimes we would ride our bikes, but the people who owned the houses and the yards were not very happy with us because they said you're going to wear a path through the grass.
hmm
And it's that picture, if you will. If you walk through the woods, there's a path because people have walked that way over and over and over again, and they've worn a path. And that's how we build new neural pathways. It's all grass, but we keep going over it one step at a time until suddenly there's a path there and it's a new neural pathway. And so we're not completely fearless. We're just not letting fear make every decision in our lives. And I think that's the beginning of self-love.
I agree. And I love that analogy. While you were talking about it, I was reminded of a story. My mother-in-law, she's been passed for 15 years now, but she grew up in that fear. Her parents would say, don't climb on that. You're going to fall and hurt yourself. So that's what she grew up with. So when she was an adult, she still had that fear with her. So unfortunately, she suffered from a lot of mental health issues. As a result of that fear, she had trouble even holding down a job because she just didn't have that confidence in herself because of that, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt yourself. So that's just a prime example. So if you're in an environment where somebody's continually, speaking like that to you, the one step, like you say, is to maybe not listen to them one day. And you know what? Climb on that curb, climb on the jungle gym. Just try that one thing, just the one time and you notice, oh my God, I survived. I didn't fall and break my neck, and it builds and it builds and it builds, I think on that, right?
And that's really
Because
the role of coaching to help people through that process because some people, because of their upbringing, because of where they are, I don't want to say they can't do it themselves because surely they're capable, but
yeah,
it's
but they've
difficult for
had
them
those
to do.
limitations put on them. They've had those
So a coach can
limitations
help
instilled in
them
them.
work through
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. The limiting beliefs, the
Yes.
self-limiting beliefs,
And whether
self-limiting
we
beliefs.
realize it or not, the limiting beliefs are running our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. Totally agree. I see it in myself and acknowledge it in the past and even now still sometimes stopping and asking myself, well, what am I really afraid of? I'm afraid of, like you say, failing or not getting accepted into the community or organization. But because I've been doing this for a long time, like you can kind of stop myself and say, you know what? No, I am absolutely worthy to be able to be part of that organization. So now I'm going to tell myself and I'm going to journal about it that I'm very grateful to be a part of that organization and put that out to the universe and see myself working with that so that just takes a little bit of practice. That's that retraining the brain that we're talking about, the neuroplasticity, right? Acknowledging that and being able to say, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to let that fear control me. I'm going to stop and pause and change the pattern and intentionally say, nope, I can do that. But that's what we're here for, to help people get to that stage and get to that step and be able to go through that process.
And that's why the techniques that people have heard about, journaling, affirmations, listening to music, telling yourself something positive, this is why all these techniques work. And in my book, I do talk about them. And there are some reflective exercises that people can take the time to do and actually practice some of these techniques. But this is why they work. And a lot of times people will think, oh, I keep hearing about affirmations. Do they really work? Or I keep hearing about journaling. Does it really work? Well, there's some neuroscience behind why that works.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's part of what we were just talking about, the repetition, right? Because, and if for anybody who is a doubter or a non believer and that or hasn't experienced that, think about when you go to school. When you go to school growing up, what do you do when you study? You read something over and over and over again so that your brain remembers.
Mhm.
It's the same, it's the same thing. It's the same, or a similar activity that you're doing still to be able to train your brain. When you're learning something new, you read it over and over again. Repetition. That's how we remember. That's how the brain remembers. So it's the same thing when it comes to affirmations or journaling, repetition, telling yourself over and over again, you are good enough, you are worthy, you can do it. The brain eventually catches on and says, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. I can. It's safe. It's okay.
A lot of times people will say, well, I'm saying something, but it's not really true. You're not, you're saying it to train your brain. First of all, how do you know it's not true? You know, we believe the negative, but we won't believe the positive. But you're
Yes,
telling.
exactly. Exactly. Isn't that funny how we do that? We end up believing the negative before we do the positive. And the interesting thing about that is that when we're born open to everything. It's our upbringing that teaches us. We respond to our parents, the first smile, or, I mean, sure, we need that guidance when we're little and developing and learning so that we don't walk off a cliff and kill ourselves. So, yes, we do need some boundaries as we're growing and learning. But through the developmental stage, that upbringing is a key thing, I think, to thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation to be able to speak with someone who does something similar as well and be able to have this conversation about the brain and the way it's working and how we can relate that to our everyday lives.
Yes, we need more of these conversations, and I'm very honored to have been part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we will have Pat's links down below, including a link for her book if anybody is interested in checking that out, as well as her social links to be able to connect with her. Thank you again so much. It's been such a wonderful conversation. And as always, thank you so much for joining me today for uh, today's episode of the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast. And as always, choose self-love first. Thank you and bye for now.